I have a confession to make. I am obsessed with Faceless. People don't get obsessed over Faceless. People get obsessed with Halloween, or Friday the 13th, or Nightmare on Elm Street, or Suspiria, or Die Hard, or Predator, or Terminator, or pretty much any movie in the world except Faceless. But Faceless was directed by the great European cult. He did all kinds of movies. He did action, he did horror, he did strange, swirling, psychosexual dramas. Did all kinds of crazy movies. Faceless is directed by Jess Franco, and I guess the cinema of Jess Franco is the cinema of obsession. A filmmaker who obsesses over these images, who has this kind of swirling jazz sensibility to making films, which lends itself to surreal, bizarre, strange, psychosexual, crazy films. So I guess it makes sense that I get obsessed over Jess Franco. Many people are obsessed over Jess Franco. But Faceless, it doesn't really, in many ways, it doesn't really look like your typical Jess Franco, or the Jess Franco movie that we're used to from the 60s and the 70s, the cheapness of it, the weirdness of it, the explicitness of the sexuality here. It's dialed back a little bit in Faceless, but I think it's if you come to Jess Franco from the Euro cult horror fans' suggestions of gotta watch Succubus or Vampiros Lesbos or She Killed in Ecstasy or something like that, and you're like, well, this doesn't even make sense, isn't it? Faceless is the movie for you. Faceless is actually it really has to be my favorite Jess Franco movie. I mean, I love the Soledad Miranda films he did with as I said, She Killed in Ecstasy and Devil Came from Asakawa is that one, and all that stuff. But Faceless, it's like, it makes sense. It's a real movie that has a beginning, middle, and end. It kind of makes sense. And it's really kind of a remake of Jess Franco's first big movie, The Awful Dr. Orloff. Basically about a crazed doctor who is trying to, resuscitate his lost love by murdering women and ripping them apart. In the case of Faceless, it's this Dr. Flamand, who is this world-famous Parisian surgeon, who is one of the most preeminent doctor in Paris, has this big institute. His sister is disfigured by acid that was meant for him from a disgruntled patient. And Dr. Flamand then goes into a search in order to find an end, to give his sister a new face. And she has to have a face, so there's a lot of the seedy prostitutes and club goers of Paris are going to have to give one up. Again, as I say, kind of a remake, redo of Orloff, which was itself kind of, again, heavily inspired, whatever, by Georges Franju's Eyes Without a Face. Though in the documentary on this, the interview on this, the Jess Franco interview on Faceless, Jess Franco talked about how he was making Awful Dr. Orloff at the same time as Franju's Eyes Without a Face. Eyes Without a Face is a film very similar to the plot of Orloff. It's about a surgeon whose daughter had an accident, and her face is disfigured, and she's trying to, and he's basically kidnaps these women and is trying to do the face transplants. And in fact, really, Faceless is more of a pull from it's kind of a hybrid pull from Orloff. It's been a while since I've watched Orloff. It hasn't been a while since I've watched Eyes Without a Face. But it's kind of a hybrid of Orloff and Eyes Without a Face. And if you haven't watched Eyes Without a Face, by the way, it's one of the great European horror films, one of the great classic films. Criterion Collection released it on DVD and Blu-ray, and I have the DVD, and just every once in a while I'll spin that up, and it's just a stunning film. Not too many big French horror films, really. Recently they've kind of picked up the pace. There's not too many French horror fantastic filmmakers. They're a very tiny little group. But Eyes Without a Face is definitely a good one. And then I guess it's makes sense that a fellow countryman, René Chateau, who is the producer of Faceless, wanted to do Faceless. I think Faceless, the idea for Faceless came from René Chateau, the producer. Jess Franco was working with the actress Brigitte Lahaye on a film, I think it was called Dark Mission, before Faceless, and she brought in René Chateau, and René Chateau met Jess Franco and was like, hey, I got this idea for a movie, and the idea was Faceless. And in the interview on the disc, Jess Franco was like, why don't you be just cheaper to get the rights to Orloff and just re-release it, because it's like it's a ripoff. It's not a rip. I mean, it's a Xerox. And that's what it is. And he was like, René Chateau was kind of like more. He wanted to make a higher scale version of that, a bigger budget film. And this film was a pretty big budget film for Jess Franco. He'd been, as I said, in the 60s and 70s doing like a dozen films a year, literally. And this film, 1987, it's kind of Jess Franco's later period. It's, the late 80s, European film in general is kind of slowing down. A lot of the great European directors and actors, everybody's getting old. Everybody's kind of dying off. Everybody's going to television or going somewhere else or just retiring, And so, Faceless, again, it's one of the biggest, budget later Jess Franco movies, and he pulls it off. The film makes sense. It's a nice little gore film. It's got this crazy doctor who is kidnapping people and transplanting their faces, and it has some real stars. I mean, Helmut Berger as Dr. Flamand, who is one of the great European actors, and does a really the performance is almost a little too good for a Jess Franco movie. Brigitte Lahaye, who was doing a kind of a straight role. Again, I think this was René Chateau's, wanting to pull her into a legitimate film career and away from the X-rated stuff that she had started. Chris Mitchum, of course, Robert Mitchum's son, who was a big actor in Europe and Spain in the 70s, and so he had some name value. And Telly Savalas, a late role from Telly Savalas here, who does kind of like an extended cameo. He just kind of flew into Paris one day and did his whole role. But he's again a professional. And then Caroline Munro as kind of as this kind of starlet, this coke addicted model. A dilettante, daughter of Telly Savalas, who kind of starts off, the whole action when Chris Mitchum is sent by Telly Savalas to Paris to find Caroline Munro, and then Caroline Munro has been kidnapped by Helmut Berger's Dr. Flamand and is put into his weird facility here. And I mean, there even is, well, Dr. Flamand is kind of Orloff-y, as I was saying, but there is Orloff in this film. There is Howard Vernon, who shows up as and actually playing Orloff, and he says like, no, I can't do the face transplant surgery. There's this other guy, this Nazi doctor who's in hiding that you want to get. They pull in this guy, Dr. Moser, I believe his name is, Anton Diffring, the great European actor who was always kind of typecast as a Nazi. He was in Fahrenheit 451 and had a great screen career. And again, another star who does a little role. And he performs these face transplant surgeries, which are quite graphic. I mean, the special effects in this film were quite good. Jess Franco, in the commentary track in this film, criticizes the special effects, that it wasn't done by basically a second unit later on, that René Chateau was worried about the special effects footage matching, so he had him do the effects during the principal photography. And according to Jess Franco, they were basically hauling these effects onto the location way out, and it was affecting the quality. But I think the quality of the effects is quite good, quite incredible. And like the face transplants, which are the showcase, they're quite realistic. There's these scenes with there is this horrible scene. It's a terrible scene, and the idea of the scene is when they take this woman. There's one scene where somebody's skin is just kind of destroyed, and that's like, oh my God, it's disgusting. And then there's the other scene where somebody's face is taken off, and then you see it's this animatronic dummy with their eyes moving, and it just has no face, and the doctor shows the faceless person their face. Creepy stuff. It goes pretty far. One thing I should note about Eyes Without a Face, just going back to Eyes Without a Face, the inspiration for this film, is Eyes Without a Face was pretty graphic as well. They had the face transplant surgery for Eyes Without a Face for, what was that, a late 50s, early 60s film? I don't know, my head is off about the specific date, the specific release date of Eyes Without a Face, but the makeup effects in that film, for a film of its era, were incredible, because there's a point in the surgery where they take somebody's face off, and in a normal film, it's like that's the point where they cut, or they put it in silhouette, like the Edgar Ulmer Black Cat, when Boris Karloff gets like flayed at the very end, and you just see in silhouette. And in Eyes Without a Face, there's the face transplant scene where it's like you think they're going to cut, and you're like, they're not cutting, and you actually see a really incredible effect in that original film. But they managed to kind of one-up it in Faceless, even though some of the stuff gets a little bit goofy and crazy, and it's a little bit of a gorehound's delight. They do some good stuff, and there is some hokey stuff as well, as I was saying. But overall, I love the soundtrack. The soundtrack, there's this guy Vincenzo Tomà who sounds like kind of like a George Michael, and he sings the Faceless theme song. Faceless hearts come out at night when there's no one else in sight. Thinking of New York on the Champs-Élysées. Destination nowhere. A half a mile to paradise. Almost reminded me of David Hess in The Road Leads to Nowhere, some of those lyrics. But anyway, the evocations of late 80s mall pop Paris, is so cool. I just love I have the soundtrack. It's on, parts of it are on Amazon actually. And the overall vibe of the film, because it was shot during Christmas in Paris, and the way I think it's the Arc de Triomphe and the Champs-Élysées, and the way that this camera captures, it's the opening of the film is Dr. Flamand and his Brigitte Lahaye, which is his assistant, and then his sister, just wandering around the city with this faceless heart. People who watch the movie know the Faceless theme song. It's just, they play it literally 4 or 5 times throughout the film, and some people get sick of it. I love it. I love the music. That's how messed up in the head I am. I love the music. And the whole vibe of the film, this late 80s, France, Paris, just the vibe. I've never been there, but it seems kind of nostalgic for me. I don't know, And the fact that Jess Franco, it's obvious he has the budget. He's doing this thing. It's not high budget, but it's obvious he had the resources and the actors. A lot of high-profile international actors like Caroline Munro and Savalas, and made this film. Now, in the commentary track and the interview on the Shriek Show DVD, Jess Franco talks about how after the film was finished, he was disappointed in the results. He felt that they'd spent too much time on some things and not enough time on other things. He felt that, that the producer had kind of pushed him into making more of a sex film, into including more sexually explicit scenes, when he was really more of trying to do like an action, horror, suspense type film. Which I agree with him that the gore film, the gore scenes, the horror scenes, the effects in this film are really Hollywood class at times. It's a little bit goofy, but I mean, for the late 80s, it's quite accomplished special effects for a European horror film. Really knocks him out of the park. And I think he could see the film having a much wider audience without some of those, obsessive, some of those sex scenes where we're watching on monitors, people having sex and going on, far too long, And it's odd. It's funny with Jess Franco kind of arguing that in the interview. We'd think it would be the reverse. The producer wanted to make a traditional film and Jess Franco wanting to bring in the sex, which I think it was the reverse, really. I think at that point there also was the typecasting that Jess Franco was a sex filmmaker and that he couldn't make traditional films. And I think Faceless proves that wrong. I think Faceless proves, and a lot of other films during Jess Franco's filmography, that when he had the resources, he could make a very good film. And that's what Faceless is. I think it's a very good film, a very nostalgic kind of retro film in some ways, really, really good. What else am I going to talk about? Oh, I could go on for hours about the soundtrack, man. I mean, the music by, as I said, Vincenzo Thomas, and then Carol Welsman does a song. This Toronto's Canadian singer, Carol Welsman, did a song called, she has a few, One Night Samba and Just Imagination and some other songs. And she's like, she's kind of Laura Branigan-ish. And they play Just Imagination in the club scenes, and it feels very, I've never even been to Paris, but it feels like very nostalgic in some places I've never even been. It's crazy. I just love the song. I love that kind of Laura Branigan-ish, late 80s pop. It's just great. Laura Branigan-ish. Yes. For many years I had a Brazilian release of Faceless, which was, I don't know what it was, gray market, whatever. But now I got this. Now I'm street legal, and I got the actual Shriek Show, Scream. I always get Scream Factory, but the Media Blasters Shriek Show release DVD of Faceless. At this point, it hasn't, as far as I know, come out anywhere on Blu-ray. This release was delayed, I think, by 6 months or over 6 months. All of the Shriek Show, if you remember back in the early 2000s, all of those like Burial Ground and Beyond the Darkness, they were all delayed. They were all delayed for whatever reasons. But this film, this DVD has some great extras. It's got interviews with Jess Franco and Caroline Munro and Chris Mitchum, which is a great overview of Chris Mitchum's career. He's trying to get into politics now. He's been trying for the past few years, actually. And it works well. He has a certain charisma, and it really works in this film. And then it has a commentary by Lena Romay and Jess Franco, and it says it has interviews with Lena Romay. I don't think it does. In any case, and oh my God, the hypodermic needle gag. Oh, oof, oof. I just keep thinking about that other scenes. But one weird thing. It's in the Brazilian gray market release. It's in this. Is that the very last line of this film is spoken by Telly Savalas. And if you know what I'm going to say if you've watched this DVD, it's in French. There's no reason why. The very last line, for some reason, switches to a dubbed version of Telly Savalas. And it's like, it's the very end of the film. It's the very last line. And I don't know why that's, without any explanation in the liner notes of this DVD or nothing. I don't know why. I don't know why. For some reason, inexplicably, the dialogue track switches to dubbed French for the very last line of this film. And I've been trying for a little while to track down either the Laserdisc, I believe it was Hong Kong or Korean Laserdisc, or the video CD of Faceless, to see if you can. It actually has the English line at the very end of the film. I don't know if it does. Again, if somebody knows that, put it in the comments, or I will do a update maybe later somehow in 10 years or whatever. But I don't know why that is. But we'll get to the bottom of that somehow, some way. We'll get to the bottom of that. We'll track it. But okay, Faceless again. I've gotten out of my system. Been wanting to do this for a while. Again, the obsession of this. Every like 7 or 8 months, I'll think about Faceless. I'll see that trailer with Chris Mitchum fighting the bodybuilder guy, and then because there's like a Morpho in this film. There's like a big henchman like an Igor. In Awful Dr. Orloff, there was like an Igor-like henchman who's called Morpho, and it's been a character that kind of goes throughout Jess Franco's movies. There's like a guy in there who's kind of Morpho-esque. He's a henchman, and he has no eyebrows. It's kind of creepy. He likes drilling things, you know. And there's Florence Guerin, who's a French actress, who's in that Black Cat, that Demon 6, De Profundis. She plays herself. I think actually she's the famous faceless one that gets to look at her face. It's kind of creepy. And Anton Diffring, oh my God, Bridget LaHaye, you know, oh my God. Great stars, big budget for, you know, a low-budget French horror film. And, you know, I don't think it was even ever released on VHS in the US or anything. Any kind of release before this DVD. I don't know why. I don't know why it didn't go more international, because it is, you know, it could play to, it seemed like it's a film that could work well with gore hounds on DVD. And in any case, Faceless. I love it. If you've passed it by, go ahead and just kind of reassess it, because I think it's an interesting film. And for me, it's the later years of Jess Franco, because remember, after the 80s, he went to the 90s and the one-shot productions and the shot-on-video stuff and the getting really freeform and out there. I think this is one of the last in the late, and he was getting bigger budgets in the late 80s. He was doing bigger action films and stuff, and I think this is one of his last great straight horror films. Faceless, great movie. Okay, let's mix it up. Let's do something new. Let's do some audio commentary over the Faceless trailer. Yeah. Okay, so it's about to come up here. Here we got it starts off with the logo, the René Chateau Panther logo. If you're a French home video fan, this logo, many fine films produced and distributed by René Chateau. Important big films by Belmondo, important French directors. But René Chateau also did these little smaller, like, exploitation films. But, you know, for Jess Franco, they were gigantic. Okay, we got Helmut Berger, Bridget LaHaye, Telly Savalas, it's just a countdown. Good old Chris Mitchum, Stephanie Audran, I believe that's, again, another important French actress. And Savalas telling Chris Mitchum, no matter you tear Paris upside down, just get him. I love this, man. He's stalking. He looked like Mitchum in that samurai movie in Japan with Paul. Oh, he's getting beaten up. Oh, that's gonna leave some scars. Uh-oh, we got Morpho here. He's an animal. Apparently that actor felt real bad about roughing up poor Caroline Monroe. And Diffring, living flesh. And we got Morpho. He likes to hang out in his shed, grill. Some great special effects in this film. Some great gore effects. Some ridiculous things. Chris Mitchum, you know, doing his thing. And this, this is a great one. I mean, this effect. The trailer isn't really bring it out, but there it is. So there is the trailer. Hope you got some enjoyment out of that. And you can watch it on YouTube without my stupid commentary, but you know, there it is.